Hey everybody, welcome to Fiction Factory, the official podcast for Get Dangerous Games, creators of the Shadows TTRPG. I'm Scott, one of the designers for Shadows, and I'm excited to kick off this new mini-series where we explore the many different character archetypes found in the gritty and dangerous world of Shadows, a cyberpunk and supernatural tabletop role-playing game set in the dark streets of Night City. In this series, we'll be delving deep into the 6 unique character archetypes in Shadows, discussing their different strengths and weaknesses, how they fit into the world of Night City, and even some tips for playing each one effectively. Whether you're a seasoned tabletop RPG player or new to the genre, we think you'll find something to enjoy in this little series. So buckle up, grab your dice, and get ready to explore the shadows of Night City. If you're new to the game or to this series, or maybe it's been a while since you've listened to our archetype episode, let me level set with you. Archetypes are kind of the heart and soul of a character in Shadows. In other RPGs, you might have kind of a race-class situation to worry about when you're creating a character. So elven archers or alien wizards, shapeshifter assassins, all that. In most cases, you start your character concept as choosing this race-class thing, and then you go from there. In Shadows, the approach is a little bit different, since essentially everyone starts out as human. What happens next, however, is entirely up to you. When you're working out the concept and the long-term plans for your character, you really need to consider what the character's background is, who they might have interacted with, and their growing up, and where they are before they got to the start of your session playing with them. You might want to think about, are you creating a freeform character of your own that's essentially human, going to be full of your imagination and all the different things you want to bring to it? Or do you want to work within one of these archetypes that has an established set of unique features and powers? So the 6 archetypes that we're going to cover in this series are the Arcanist, which is kind of your wizard, sorcerer, mage sort of character. These are the ones who have figured out how to unlock the mysteries of the universe and wield its power like a weapon. This would be the closest to a magic user that you might see in other traditional RPGs. Then we've got cyborgs. These are folks who have melded machine to their bodies, got an interpreter inside their head that helps them communicate with machines, and they've augmented themselves. So we're talking cyber limbs, nanobots, enhanced speed, strength, maybe built-in weapons, things like that. Those are always fun to play. And then we've got kind of a unique twist that we don't really see in other games, which is the professional. These are humans who are specialists in some areas, because everybody in Night City has to make money. These are the folks who have picked up different skills or techniques, modifications, gear, stuff like that, to be the best at what they do. So these would be like your mercenary, your wheelman, your hacker, things like that, that you might expect to see in a more traditional cyberpunk sort of universe, but again, with the Shadows twist on them. And then we have kind of our supernatural characters that we're bringing in here. We have the vampire. Vampires are ancient creatures that are, brought out of the sheer supernatural horrors of ancient history. They drink blood. They seem to live forever. They've got incredible power and influence throughout Night City. And what's even scarier is that most humans have no idea that they exist, because of the way that vampires can blend into society. And each of the different vampires can belong to a different bloodline, which gives them access to unique powers. We'll definitely talk in that when we get to the vampire episode. Then we've got werewolves. So like vampires, werewolves are supernatural creatures that have an ancient history about them. And they also have the ability, perhaps more easily than vampires, to blend into the world around them. But again, they belong to one of many different houses. They've got their own unique power sets. This is a really cool thing to kind of blend the cyberpunk with the supernatural. But the first group that we're going to dive into for this episode is the human, right? This is your basic default character. Humans are the most commonly found sentient being in the world of Shadows, and they really can be found throughout every profession at every level as the dominant species. And like I said earlier, most humans are likely unaware of vampires and werewolves and angels and demons and other creatures that might be working alongside them. At least outwardly, humans make up a majority of all the members of government, corporations, law enforcement, gangs, entertainers, whatever you can consider. At first glance, if you're playing this game, you're going to assume that everybody around you is human until they prove otherwise. Now, this is set in the 2070s, so humans have evolved slightly, but there's nothing crazy going on with them. They still tend to be adults ranging, somewhere between 5 and 6.5 feet tall, weighing in between 100 and 250, 300 pounds. They tend to live around 75 years, but through the advent of technology and magic, we've seen this extension of life take folks well into their hundreds. And while humans tend to have that typical hair, eye, and skin tones that you would see in our real world today, the widespread use of technology means that those who have the cash to burn can customize their appearance very easily. So you might see, piercings and tattoos like you'd have today, but the ones that you'd get in the 2070s would be, animated tattoos or glow-in-the-dark tattoos, cosmetic implants where folks can, change their eye color or their nail color or their makeup, with the touch of a wand, like you might see in, some science fiction movies. So you can assume that all of that is going on with humans. They're not going to all be, buttoned up suburbanites. They're very much in the gritty world of Night City. Now, if you're considering what type of character to play, playing a human gives you some advantages, right? First off, you'd play a human if you wanted to blend in easily to the world around you. And if you really wanted to customize yourself to fit into whatever scenario you needed when you're playing the game. So humans come from, really any background. It can be just about any age, definitely through advantages and disadvantages in this. They can, be wealthy, they can be poor, they can be, a teenager, they can be a senior citizen, whatever job you can think of, whatever education, skill set, hobby, all of those things are available to your pretty average human. And so while humans may not have that sheer physicality of a cyborg or the magic abilities of an arcanist, the supernatural abilities of a vampire or werewolf, they can make up for this through their tenacity and through their adaptability. One of the great perks about being a human is that during character creation, humans get an extra 1d10 of freebie points. Freebie points are like bonus points that you can apply to any aspect of your character creation, whether this goes into your stats, purchases, advantages, or skills, or anything that you want, powers, all of that stuff. Humans get an extra d10 of freebie points right off the bat. This means that even though you may not start with a higher power level set or something like that, you can get some advantages that help even the playing field early on. Another thing that humans have, which is unique to them, because humans don't have powers inherently, they are, regular mortals. They have this feature called adaptability. This allows humans, as they progress through the game, to spend their improvement points and to spend their credits to take on the traits and powers of other archetypes. So the idea here is that you would have a cyborg who is, a human genetically, but then has gone through some massive changes to make themselves into a capital C cyborg. Meanwhile, right alongside them, you could have a human who gets some cybernetic enhancements. So they haven't gone full cyborg yet. They maybe don't have the neurocybernetic interpreter in their brain, or maybe they don't have quite the same extent of cybernetics. They might just have an arm done instead of, arm, leg, and built-in weapons and things like that. But they can get that cybernetic implant done that makes them, really strong or have armored skin or something like that. At the same time, they could also go and learn magic, right? Because they're not a full cyborg where the machine and the magic would fight against each other. You could have a human who knows a handful of spells, real basic rudimentary magic, but also has a big, hunking metal arm. They could even, get bitten by a vampire or a werewolf and have some of that in their bloodstream going on. So although a human is different from a custom character, which we'll talk about probably in our last episode of this series, um, through this human adaptability, they gain the ability of taking on traits of the other archetypes. So the way that this works in game is that any of these changes need to be handled in the storyline of the game. You don't just wake up one day and find that you have a metal arm or that you can cast spells. You would have to find some sort of teacher or mentor or a mechanic or whatever to work with you to add these abilities to you. And then within, the game mechanics, this would be using a milestone. So milestones are one of the ways that characters advance, and there are 4 different types of milestones, human being one of the categories of milestone. This is the same one that's shared for the cyborg and the professional and human. But where it differs is that humans, as a baseline character template, don't have a set of major milestones, which other archetypes have. Major milestones are pretty significant game changers. They're the equivalent of like leveling up within Shadows. And what this means is that humans have only a single major milestone available to them. They can take it every time, and it is called Adapted. Adapted lets you gain a rank 1 power from another archetype. This power itself cannot increase in rank. So when you're looking at being a human, one of the things you'd want to do is look at what the powers are available from other archetypes and see, how do you want to dabble in these different archetypes if that's something that's interesting to you. This major milestone is the way through game mechanics that a human can augment themselves and make it so that they can stand toe to toe with other creatures in the world. Players who don't choose an archetype and decide to stick with this are essentially creating custom players or custom character archetypes. So, like I said, you might have a human character who gets a cybernetic arm because they wanted to take the prosthetic disadvantage, where they had an arm lost. They've added a cybernetic arm. So they have to have the money to spend that. They've got to find someone who can install that arm for them and get them going. Then they've got to learn how to use it, and then it updates their stats. And then maybe after 10 more sessions, they have another major milestone coming, and they decide, because they're kind of road mapping out their character, that they want to learn some magic. So in those sessions between getting a cybernetic arm and getting to that next major milestone where they'll choose to be able to do some spell casting, that human character and that player behind the character needs to really find a way to work that into the storyline. So it could be that they're doing research on magic, or that they talk to the GM specifically about, how can I encounter a magical creature that might spur my character's interests? And then I have to go and figure out how to research it, find a group who can teach me, find a book that can teach me, something like that. One of the nice things about humans and getting those freebie points right at the beginning, and this is a recommendation I would make to anyone who's thinking about being a human archetype, is to look at some of the advantages that augment your skills. So if you take the advantage Educated, that gives you right off the bat 10 skill points, which are a direct boost to your skills. Instead of spending your improvement points or your IP to level up skills, you would say, okay, investigation, I'm going to use 1 skill point and increase that by 1 rank right off the bat. This is a huge way for human characters to add on to their arsenal. So like I said, while they may not be able to go toe-to-toe in a fight necessarily, humans have the potential to be the most skilled class and the most versatile, kind of serving in that jack-of-all-trades sort of situation where they understand tech, they understand how to do investigation, they're versed in a wide range of weapons, they know first aid, all of those different elements. And then, as that human spends more time in Night City, they can eventually take on these rank 1 powers from other archetypes. When we're talking about a rank 1 power and what that might look like, we'll talk more about the other archetypes in their respective episodes. But like an example of what that power would be like an arcanist has the power of spell casting, right? This is how an arcanist casts their magic spells, how they manipulate the ether is they do spell casting. So a human could eventually take on the power spell casting. Meanwhile, a cyborg doesn't really have powers in the same way, so a human can't really take on a cyborg's power, but they could get a cybernetic arm put on. A vampire, their powers are given through their bloodlines. So while the bloodline is not a power, that is a feature of the vampire archetype, there are innate powers that all vampires have, such as the ability to bite someone and control their will, or their ability to levitate. So you could have a human who has a big range of skills available to them, has a cybernetic arm that has maybe pop-up wrist blades in it, has the ability to conjure a minor magical shield or some sort of flaming dart or something like that to aid them in combat, and then through the course of the game is bitten by a vampire and gains the ability not necessarily to do all the things a vampire can do, but they gain the ability to regenerate or to levitate, something along those lines. If you ask me, that human 30 sessions into the game, which if you're playing weekly, that's a few months into the game of playing, that's a pretty awesome looking human. One that's got a little bit of cybernetics, a little bit of magic, and a little bit of supernatural powers. But again, humans are just the starting point for a lot of folks, and we'll see in later episodes if I can tickle your fancy and get you interested in looking into the arcanist, cyborg, professional, vampire, or werewolf. So, what are your thoughts about playing a human? Let us know in the comments. We're probably going to post this on YouTube, so you have a chance to put it in the comments there. But either way, we're going to continue this series on so you get a little bit more information, get a little more in-depth discussion about each of the different archetypes. To learn more about our game, you can check us out at shadowsrpg.com. And to learn more about the wider Get Dangerous crew and all the work we're doing, you can check us out at getdangerous.net. And then, of course, you can follow our weekly gameplay on Twitch at twitch.tv/D33KODE, that's Decode, who's the creator of Shadows. So I hope that you'll check this out, check out the rest of the series. Let me know what you think, and we'll see you in the dark streets of Night City.